Well, good morning, everybody. Bob Allen for Meet the Veteran. This is a series where we're hoping that we're always going to be able to meet all the people that made our country what it is today. And today we have Jim Daniels. Jim, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Tom.
And it's a very rare thing that we get somebody that has been able to be in 3 wars. And for those young kids that are watching it today, that would be the Korean War, after World War II, the Korean War, and then the Vietnam War. So let's start off, Jim. How did you first get involved? What was the year and how old were you? And tell us a little story about First World War II and your experiences there.
Well, I was dropped out of school after I graduated from the 8th grade, and because I had 2 years of really good education, and my high school principal and teacher taught me all of us how to take responsibility of our life and plan ahead for what we would like to do. Then I was working for my uncle, running movies 3 nights a week, then worked running his place. And one day he just said, "Hey, you're doing okay, you just run it." So when school started, I never went back to school.
So you were an entrepreneur at an early age.
Then all my friends I run around with, they all came into service. And so I started thinking about it, but I was only 16. So I started talking to my father for 2 months to go down with me and sign the papers. I was 17. Well, after 2 months, he did, and signed the papers, and all of a sudden I had orders going into Camp Perry, Virginia, which was a new camp they were just building. Mm-hmm. And there was over 1,300 of us, officers and men, that reported in and formed the 81st Navy Construction Battalion. And then it was raining, sleeting, or snowing every day. Excuse me. We couldn't get outside to do much, and when it did, we had field fortification and barbed wire entanglement on the Yorktown River. And for inside, when it was foul weather, they would teach us how to fight with machetes.
Wow.
And the kid that about 12 miles from my hometown, we paired off and we got pretty good. And one day they gave us 2 real ones. Then they busted it down to 3 outfits. And we came out here, we were all made CBMUs, over 300 men and officers. And then we all went out of San Francisco, May 1 of 43. And each one of us went to a different island.
Wow.
And I started off American Samoa. Then after a few months, we were extending the runway, and also I worked on help building a emergency landing out of volcanic ash.
Where?
In American Samoa.
Wow.
Then all of a sudden, half of the outfit got aboard ship and went to Funifuri. And there I run 4 water evaporators making water. I was 3rd class by then, because I made 3rd class about 3 months after we were overseas. And then they needed someone go up to another island to operate a tow grader for a lot of trenching and a lot of ditches and stuff. And so they got me an operator, and 48 of us went up there. And I got all the work that I was done, and we came back to Funifuri and got about aboard ship and went to
So you were traveling all through the South Pacific during the years 1944 and 45?
Well, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Then we went back to American Samoa, picked up the rest of the outfit. Then we went to, well, from Furi, I went to Nanumea, Nuga Fatal, Tongatabu, Espiritu, and New Caledonia.
Wow.
And we had reliefs twice. A lot of the men were being sent home.
Okay.
And they were all up in the age of old construction workers, anywhere from 30 to 55 years of age. And
That was part of the crew. In other words, the age group that you're saying was from you at 16 up to.
yeah, because that's what they were after when they first formed the Seabees in 41, was to get all the construction workers that was all trades of construction in the different outfits so they could move out and do a lot of building and all that men had already been doing that type of work for 15 or 20 years.
It was a different kind of time. I mean, when the war started, basically everybody was going whatever they could do. I mean, women were in the movies, that we see, the women were working in factories, so.
Right, yeah. My mother worked in an animation where they was making a lot of different
Wow.
bullets, everything else. And she did that for, I'd say about a year. And came
Wow.
back home.
So then it started separating, and now World War II is over, so most people the older people, what you're saying, were coming home and going back to their families.
Yeah.
What happened with you?
Well, once we got to New Caledonia, we had a whole lot of replacements come in, and so what was left of us, they let us come home for leave and reassignment. And the other group, the old outfit was going in on the invasion of Okinawa. But they changed it and sent them to Guam. They spent the rest of the war on Guam. Then 2 days out of San Pedro, Germany surrendered. Then none of us had uniforms. All our uniforms were rotten. And they sent us up to Sacramento, and CB base up there, and outfitted us with new seat bags. And so I went home on leave, and excuse me, went home on leave and reported into East Coast Battalion there in Rhode Island, and my time was getting up, so I got out and went to work, and I started having trouble with the dengue fever that I had got.
When you went to work, did you go back to your hometown?
Yeah, I went back to my hometown and I worked there for a while. Then I decided, my other buddy, that we went in about the same time in 42, but we weren't together. But we met the next day when both of us had got discharged, and then we came back in before our 90 days was up so we could keep our rates. Then we both reported in out here. Then from here, I met my wife and had a son in 48.
Well, she was a wave, you had mentioned,
She
right?
was the wave at the hospital.
Right.
She was a second-class pharmacist mate. Then when she got out July the 6th of 46, she came back up here, and we had a Navy Quonset hut that we lived in for housing. And we went to Guam, and my daughter was born on Guam. I was with the 103rd Battalion there, and made first class, and got orders to Sasebo, Japan, where I could see all my friends as they came through here
Wow.
for Korea.
So you've traveled the world.
Because we were only 60 miles from Busan.
Wow.
And so, but it was in the Korean War zone that.
Did you realize, were you, prior to the outbreak of the Korean War, okay, what was your duties that you were doing?
Well, I was on Guam. I was working, I had 43 men working with civilians. We were driving all the school buses, so they're hauling all the kids on the island to different bases.
So the Navy really was providing some tremendous services to these islands after.
Oh yeah, and Guam was outstanding. Duty for a man who was married and had his family with him.
So you had your whole family with you at the time?
Yeah, for 2.5 years on Guam.
And then what happened when the Korean War broke out?
Well, we came home and we got through Pearl and came back to the States and got leave, and I reported in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
and got sent to Japan. And there I worked, my job was running the transportation. I had 16 sailors working for me and 132 Japanese.
Wow.
And we worked 3 shifts a day, and we all cargo and ammunition coming in, and when the fleet would pull in, we'd haul it back and supply the ships. And that's why we had all the Japanese drivers doing the driving.
Wow.
And then when I left there, I came back and got orders going to Guam again on putting the AFDB-1 together.
You know, and not to interrupt, but I'm sitting here thinking how people who are watching this today, and you're talking about going from California to Washington, D.C. to Guam, to most people it would be, well, let's get on airplanes. There weren't airplanes at that time, were there? Weren't you taking
No, we went by ship.
and trains across the country? Or did
Oh
you go
yeah,
like-
we rode the cranes. You didn't fly then.
that's what I meant. In listening to you, that was one of the first things. How many hours you must have spent just traveling on a train or a ship to
Well,
get somewhere.
It took 3 days coming across country.
Yep, yep.
And when I came out in 43, all 3 of the outfits on there, that was over 1,800 men. They had us on this long train
Wow.
that must have been in mothballs for years. And so
Well-
we made it out here. They pulled right aboard the base.
Yeah. Well, let's try and stay where we were. We were just the Korean War is now over. Okay.
Yeah, when I got my orders and I came back, then I reported in here, and 14 days later I'm on my way back to Guam. And we put the floating dry dock out there. There was 10 sections of the wing walls laying down in the well deck of the Victory ships. And we had to raise them wing walls and put them together. So we'd bring 2 up into the docks and raise the wing walls. Then we would put the 2 of them together, hook everything up, take them out and moor them, then we'd bring 2 more in. And when it got up to where we had our last 2, the men wanted to work through, straight on through to get them together, and so they could have Christmas Eve off. Then they wanted to work straight on through, getting them 2 moored out into the bay with the other 8, but they had to put cranes, gantry cranes on wing walls of the A.
You were developing the first mechanism systems. That's for sure.
And my orders finally came through to go to shore duty, and I went to Arizona. And I was stationed at the air station for 2.5 years.
Wow. So let's take you. You started in 42, 43 when you first joined, and now we're getting into the late 60s, okay, or the time of when were you involved with the Vietnam War?
Well, when I was here, I got assigned a battalion and went to Vietnam. I was in the school. I came out here as an instructor. By then, I had made chief.
What year was that?
That was in '57.
Got it.
I reported in out of school and taught, picked up a new class of A students every 4 weeks, teaching them earthwork, how to transfer elevations with the engineer level. And then went from that to dozers, to tractor drawn scrapers, to graders. Then I'd pick up another class, and I did that for a year. And the lead chief retired, and I took over as lead
Wow.
chief. And next 4 years, and I went to 100 went to battalion here, NCB 5, and I was leading chief of the Alpha Company. And we deployed and came back and was getting ready to deploy again when the executive officer called me and said, "Senior Chief, you got a appointment with Major Smith at 1300. And I said, "What's this for?" He said, "Well, he's looking for a leading chief in military training and he wants to interview you."
Wow.
I said, "Commander, I never put in for this." He said, "I know you didn't. He requested you." And so I thought,
Quite an honor.
So I thought that was pretty good to be selected by a Mustang Major
Yeah.
to fill a position for him. And he was going 75% of the time. We had 5 battalions here, and I worked with the operation officer in each one of them, setting up all their training here and also at Camp Pendleton. I would go down there.
So when did you finally retire?
Well, I went and came after my 16 months was up with the major. I was due for orders. I went back to school command again for another 3 years as leading chief of the school again. And when I got out there, I went to NCB 8, and we were scheduled for Vietnam. Then we were out in Vietnam. I went out ahead of time with 60 of my men to take over all the jobs and hold inspection on all equipment. And so I was supposed to be with my company commander and the operations officer. And 10 minutes after I took over, started running the beat, inspecting all the equipment, they hit a landmine 10 minutes later.
Wow.
And the senior chief was paralyzed, and from the waist down, the lieutenant commander went out the driver's side and broke his back. And my lieutenant went out the right side and got bent up a little bit. And that he was laid up quite a bit. He had shell shock so bad. So I was running the company for almost 3 months until he came back.
No, it's that leadership that it seems like started all the way back when you were 16 and decided to go into your own business instead of going back to school.
Yeah,
So-
especially when all the first class in there assigned me to their master arms and making the far list.
But one of the things that we always want to do in this Meet the Veterans series is that we hope that there are a lot of young teenagers today that are sitting here listening to what the world was like while you were growing up at the same age that they're out there running around today to different. And so that we could make this something, do you have just a few words that you could say
Well,
to the youngsters of today?
Well, one thing is that my son went into the Seabees, and he was on his second tour 50 miles from me.
Wow.
And I called one morning, and I had to run over there to talk to him by radio. And he said, "Dad, they called me out of quarters this morning, and the captain promoted me to E5. I said, "What?" I said, "You only got 19 months in." He said, "I know it. But I was recommended for it, and they called me out and gave it to me this morning." And 3 days later, he got hit with a 2-stage rocket and tore up pretty bad, and they had to evacuate him to the hospital ship. Then I got a medevac out at 7 next morning, spent all day with him, and
Wow.
knew he was coming home and he was going to be okay, but he was going to be laid up quite a while. And I got hit 11 days after he did in the rocket attack. And, I guess I went up in the air pretty high, and from what my men told me, and I came down on a piece of concrete and got a concussion, knocked out, both my ears bled real bad,
Wow.
and I couldn't move, but it screwed up my back also.
Wow.
Then I was laid up in the CP, and once I could get out of bed and walk with crutches, I went back because my lieutenant was still laid up, hadn't been released yet.
Wow. So for the Seabees, there was quite a difference in the technology now. What you're starting to talk rockets, those were not available in World War II, I don't think, were they?
Oh yeah.
In other words, you were seeing much more in Vietnam.
Oh yeah, because you never know when you were going to be hit. The
Wow.
outfit we released had never been hit, except when our bench party got there. We were there 2 days, and they started coming in.
Wow.
And that first time, I lost 3 men that evening.
Yeah.
They didn't get killed, but they was wounded enough that they had to be evacuated out. And we got my yeoman that rode up for the Bronze Star, him, and talked to the senior chief in the other outfit who recommended his yeoman because they exposed themselves as rockets coming in, carrying them into back of the CP. And they wanted me to look at another guy, first class, that had been shot through the head. There was shrapnel went through his head.
See, that's what these kids that are playing on these devices now and playing all these war games, they don't understand what it's like seeing somebody with their head blown open, do they?
No, it's
Not a nice sight.
and
Well, rather than go to the negatives, I want to start staying on the positives, Jim. And I don't want to make this too long because then it gets to the point where people... So
Right.
let me ask you this. 2 things hit me. Do you by any chance in your teaching while you were at the Navy base, the Seabees, teach Steve Thomas? Steve Thomas. And I'm teasing only because I remember the opening of the CB Museum. Steve Thomas, who's one of our local, car dealers, he basically stayed in this community because when he...
Well, his father was in business, and Steve came through in '67 to
Yeah.
the EO school,
Yep.
and when I was still there as leading chief. And so I served Steve for many years.
That's what I meant. So
So right after I retired, and I went to work for the school district in management, and where I was still locally connected here, and then I was in worked for them for 17 and a half years, and then I retired from that and went on leave and came back and run for city council, and 38 years on city council. But all that time and even up to today, I've been very active with the CPs. And from what they taught me, I had a man that was 3 years older than me. I had to go through like an apprenticeship in each piece of equipment that he taught me to operate.
Well, I want to end this by thanking you so much for coming here and spending the time with us. But the one thing that I'm getting from what you did is you never took. You were always, whatever you were given, you always give back to whether it's your family, the community, or anything. Isn't that what we have to teach our young children of today?
Yes, and we got all the Chiefs first class now are continuing to teach these young people what it is to be a CB.
Jim, thank you so much for coming, and I hope it's many, many more years.